When I tell you that I save all of my lids, I save all of my lids. This one's really fun. I can't wait to put this all together because it's going to be adorable. I've painted all of these lids with some primer, spray primer, and then I've painted them all different colors with some of my acrylic paint that I had, and drilled a hole in the top of all of them. And then this is just a tin can that I had. I drilled a hole in the top and holes all around the sides, and primed it and then painted it with some of my homemade white chalk paint. We're gonna put a fun graphic on it. Be grateful, slow down, enjoy life. We're gonna use this one that's reversed with the Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer. And I'm gonna make a wind chime. I've printed off the graphic on my LaserJet printer on just regular computer paper, and I'm using my Mod Podge mat. And we're going to put it on the jar, let it sit and dry, and then rub off the paper, and we'll have a graphic on our wind chime. While we're waiting for my graphic to dry, I'm going to put a hanger on the top. I'm just taking some twine, pulling it right through, and then I'm going to tie a knot, probably a couple knots actually, to keep that twine in the jar. Pull it through, and then decide how long you want it to hang down. And then I'm just going to tie a loop in the top, so we have a loop to hang it from. Trim off the extra, and we've got a hanger. I've got some of my thinner twine. I'm going to put this through the hole in each of these little lids, tie a knot so it'll stay on, and then I'm going to do them all different random lengths, so when they're hanging from our wind chime, they all hang at different spots on the wind chime. I've tied on all my lids, and now I'm just going to wet the paper and rub it off, so we're left with graphics. I distressed the lids a little bit with a little bit of sandpaper. I think it just kind of gave them that really nice rustic look. The colors are all fantastic. I love how colorful it is. My graphic's all done. I distressed the tin can some too. I'm gonna take some jute and put some jute on the top and the bottom with the hot glue, and it'll be finished. It's all done, and I thought it was going to be easier to put it all together and then give it a really good coat of this engine enamel to seal it up really well. I'm not going to have this right out in the elements, but I'm going to hang it up underneath a porch, so it's not going to get wet or snow or anything at all the time, but I do want to seal it really well. I'm going to hang it up and give this a really good spray, and it'll be all finished. This might be one of my favorite upcycles that I've done in a while. I love it. I love the little colorful, whimsical look of it. So easy to put together, and I love using up free stuff from the recycling bin. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is fill up your sink with the hottest water that you can get out of your tap. And then I like to use the Dawn dish soap. It seems to cut through the grease and the grime better than any other dish soap. And then I like to add about a 1/4 cup of white vinegar right into the water. Okay, now we're ready to fill the sink up with bottles. What I like to do is I like to take the hot water out of the tap and fill up the bottles before I put it in the soapy water. It helps loosen up the adhesive from the inside out to get those labels off. Another tip is I fill up my kettle and I boil the water, and then I pour it right into the sink, because the water coming out of your tap isn't that hot as a boiling kettle full of water. So I put a full kettle right into my sink, and then I let everything sit and soak. Now we're gonna let everything soak for about 15 minutes. Now we're waiting for everything to soak. I'm gonna show you, these labels are really hard to soak off in water. They're like a plastic label. So I'm gonna use my heat gun, and I find that helps take these off pretty good. And you're just gonna take your heat gun on high setting and just be really careful because it's really hot and the plastic will melt a little bit. You don't want to burn yourself, but just be really careful and just slowly go up and down the whole label until you can kind of feel when it's starting to lift away from the jar. Don't grab it with your fingers when it's hot. Use a scraper or you will burn yourself. Okay, it's cooled down a little bit and you can peel that label right off. But as you can see, there's a little bit of sticky residue still left on the jar. I'll show you how to get that off in a minute. Okay, it's been 15 minutes, and as you can see, some of the labels have actually just lifted completely off. And I know some girls, if the labels come off in one piece, they like to save them. They'll dry them out and they'll use them on other crafting projects. And this one, you can see the label came right off, but it did leave some residue right on. So we're gonna have to use another technique to get that off. What I like to do is I like just to grab one of my butter knives and use the smooth end of it and just scrape it. And most of the stuff will probably just scrape right away. I'm just going to empty out the water out of it, and I'll show you how well just scraping it with a knife takes that adhesive right off of it. And there you can see it's nice and clean. I'm going to save the rest of it on that bottle to show you other techniques that we can try. And this one here, it didn't really soak off, but the top part of the label is quite loose. So I'm just going to take my knife again and use the dull side and just scrape it away, and you can see that it comes off, the paper label comes off quite easily. It is leaving some adhesive on the bottle though, so once we get all the paper off of that, I'll show you a technique to get all of that adhesive off. And you can see the sticky residue that's left on there. And the gin bottle. And that label is actually going to peel off quite easy. And then I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to scrape off the back of that label too. And as I'm scraping away on this, it's actually not leaving any adhesive. So it's coming really clean just with soaking it and just taking a knife and scraping off the paper. Crown Royal bottle, the label just comes right off, no problem, and there's no sticky residue underneath, so I'm just going to give it a nice little wipe with the cloth and it's going to come off nice and clean. Now let's see how this little barbecue sauce bottle turned out. I love this little bottle, actually. It's a really cute bottle and I have a great idea on how to upcycle this, and I think that's going to be my next video, so stay tuned for that. And this little bottle is going to come nice and clean, just with a little bit of scraping. Okay, there is a little bit of adhesive stuck on this blue bottle in the one corner, and I'm going to try, I've never tried this technique before, but I've seen some girls that have used it, and it's olive oil. So I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil where the sticky residue is and then rub it in. And it actually is working. It is taking some of that adhesive off. I'm just going to take my little knife here and scrape at it a little bit, and it actually works pretty good. If you guys have any techniques that you've tried and work really well that you don't see that I've used in the video, I'd love to hear about them. So leave a comment down in the description and let me know. Now here is my favorite method. This works almost 90% of the time, probably 95% of the time. And it's just an SOS pad. And you just wet it a little bit with the water and scrub on that adhesive and it just comes right off. Now another method that I've heard about is peanut butter. So I'm gonna give it a try. It says to spread it on liberally and then let it sit for about 5 or 10 minutes and let the oils penetrate into the adhesive. Okay, we've been 15 minutes and let's see if that scrapes off. I'm finding already that it's not working very well. It's not really lifting the adhesive at all. I really don't know about this technique. Maybe some people have had some good results with it, but it's not working for me today. Now let's get this peanut butter washed off. And there you can see the residue that's still there that the peanut butter didn't take off. So back to the SOS pad, and I'm going to show you how easily it'll take it right off. I actually have a video that I just made on how I paint my glass jars and get the paint to adhere to them really well. I'll put a link below in the description so you can watch that after you watch this video. Okay, now here's a method that I don't really like to use. It does work, but it is a chemical. My husband's a power sport mechanic, and this is brake clean. He always has it in the garage, so if I have something really stubborn, it does work and it does take the residue off. If you're using it, make sure you do it in a good, well-ventilated area. Keep a glove on. If you don't have a glove on and you have nail polish and you spray this on your nails, say goodbye to your nail polish. I've learned that from experience. As you can see, it did take it off, but it worked just as well as the SOS pad. Now there's this patch on the back, and I'm going to show you another method, which is WD-40. And again, I don't really like to use this. I'd rather stick to something natural, but it does work. Again, if you're going to use this, make sure you wear a glove and a good ventilated area. Okay, now this gin label, the labels came off easy, but there seems to be like a painted label on the side, and I'm going to see if I can try to get that off. Now I've read online that if you soak a paper towel in vinegar and wrap it around the bottle and put it in a plastic bag and let it soak overnight, that it will take that paint off. So let's give it a try. Okay, next morning, let's see if this worked. We'll untie the bag, we'll take the paper towel off, and let's hope that painted label has come off. So far, it doesn't look very promising. Doesn't look like it's going to work. And I'm kind of even wondering if it is paint. Maybe it's etched in there, but it doesn't look like it's etched. I'm gonna give it a try with the SOS pad, but it's not even budging or scraping off. I'm just gonna wet the SOS pad a little bit and give it a scrub, but it's not budging. So I'm not quite sure what is even on this bottle, whether it's painted or etched right in. If you've ever ran into this, leave me a comment down below in the description. Okay, and the next method I'm going to show you is, this is an easy one too. If you don't want to soak your wine bottles and you have a heat gun, then this technique works perfect. I've tried to use my hairdryer, and my personal hairdryer doesn't get hot enough to remove the labels, but my husband has a heat gun, so I'm using his. And you just go up and down over the label, probably for about a minute to loosen all that glue, and it should peel right off. And there you have the glass bottle. The labels just peeled right off, no glue residue, worked perfect. We are going to do some crackle paint on some glass upcycled bottles. I have a wine bottle and I have a pickle jar. I'm going to show you two different techniques that you can try to crackle paint. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put just a light spritz of spray paint on these. It just helps the paint bond better to the glass. You can use a flat white spray paint. I really like this primer. That's my go-to. I'm going to take them outside and give them a light spray. The primer is all dry and it works fantastic as a base on glass. When you're doing this technique, you can use any sort of color combinations. My go-to is usually a darker color on the base and then a light white on the top. But like I said, you can play around and do whatever color combinations that you like. On the wine bottle, I'm going to start with putting a base of black chalk paint. And for the pickle jar, I'm going to use some really pretty blue. This paint is completely dry. This is a really good tip. You want to make sure every coat of paint in between each coat is really, really dry. If you try to put the next coat on while this is still a little bit wet, when you paint it on, it's going to lift the paint. Let it dry. We're now ready to start the crackle process. This is another little trick that I like to do for when you're working on glass bottles so the bottle doesn't roll all around. This is just a lint roller, and it'll stick to the side of the bottle and it'll prevent it from rolling. When we're doing this crackle process, I like to do it in steps. I find that if you try to do the whole bottle all at once, I didn't have as good results. So we're gonna do panels, probably 3 panels before we've completed the whole bottle. Now, to create some crackle on this one, I am going to be using hairspray. This works fantastic on wood to create crackle. Also works great on glass. I have a full tutorial on how I did a wooden sign with this. I'll put the link down below in the description. You can check it out. Any kind of hairspray will work. You just want to make sure that you put a really thick coat of it on. So I'm just going to spray it on one section. And you want it to look really wet. And you can speed the process up with a heat gun. I find it works better than the hairdryer. The hairdryer has such a gush of air, it can kind of move stuff around. So if you have a heat gun, just put it on low setting and just dry that hairspray. My hairspray is completely dry. We're now going to add our top coat. I'm using some white chalk paint. You can use acrylic paint or latex paint, just whatever you have in your stash. What you want to do with this is you don't want to work it too many strokes. You want to just kind of do long strokes and just in that area where we put hairspray. Now here's where I found it worked the best. I find it works better if you dry it with the heat gun. The crackles will turn out better and show up faster than just letting it air dry. So now that we've got this on, we're going to use the heat gun and you will see the crackles appear. As you can see with the hairspray, it's a very fine crackle. It's not a real thick, pronounced crackle, but it's still beautiful. But we're going to show you the Elmer's glue. I really like the way that it crackles. The next method I'm going to show you is with school glue. Any kind of school glue will work. I just have the Elmer's on hand, and we're going to put it in sections again, like the last one. We're just going to paint the Elmer's glue. And you don't want a really thick coat. You just want it to completely cover that one area. You can get it right up around the rim if you want some crackles up there. This also works great on wood if you want to try this technique on wood too. I have a full tutorial on how to create crackle paint for a base for your signs. And we're just going to let that just kind of sit for about 30 seconds and just kind of get tacky. This is sat for about 30 seconds. Now we're going to take the white chalk paint. And again, you don't want to make too many strokes in it. You just want to kind of make long strokes. Maybe just going up and down a couple times. And we're going to get our heat gun and dry this. And look at the crackle with the Elmer's glue. We're gonna go on to the next panel. We're gonna put the Elmer's glue right up to where we left off, the same amount, and then add the paint on top. The reason that I do it in sections is I found when I did it standing up, gravity actually pulled the glue and the paint down and it didn't crackle as well. So I know this is a little bit more of a process doing it this way, but I do find that you'll have better results. And we're just gonna put that coat of white paint. We're not working it in too much. Once you get the hang of this, it goes really easy. And we're gonna get our heat gun and dry it up. And there's the crackle with the Elmer's glue. Out of the two methods, this is my favorite. But if you're looking for just like a nice small crackle, then the hairspray works well. Now you're at the step where you can decoupage on top of this if you have some pretty napkins. I don't like doing a graphic transfer on top of these, the reverse one, because it is a little bit fragile, and when you're putting water on to rub off the paper, it doesn't stick that well. But decoupaging is perfect, or you can just seal them up and add embellishments on top. I'm going to seal them up with my water-based polyacrylic sealer in satin. And there you have two different techniques to crackle paint on glass. If you want to use the Elmer's glue, it gives a real pronounced crackle, and if you want to try the hairspray, it gives more of a smaller crackle. I've added a couple tags on them, a faux plant in the pickle jar, and I'm propagating my umbrella plant. And let me know down in the comments if you've ever tried either of these crackle techniques. Let's get started upcycling some glass jars and bottles. I save all of them. At some point though, I do get too many and I have to create lots, and that's where I'm at right now. I've got a whole bunch of them. These are one of my best selling. You've seen me create my wooden signs with scrap wood. These come in a real close second for selling and making some money with them. So I always paint them and I add some graphics on them, I decoupage on them, and I'm going to just show you a couple of the different designs today that might give you some ideas and get you inspired. But when you are going to paint glass, it has to be really, really clean. I use some rubbing alcohol. This is rubbing alcohol here. And first I wash it with some hot soapy water, and then I wipe it down with some rubbing alcohol, because a lot of these glass jars, they have grease and grime that get on them, and we want that paint to adhere really well. If we're going to be selling a product, we don't want that paint chipping off 2 weeks after they buy it. So we want to make sure that we're cleaning it really, really well. So that's the first step. Second step. Now I do have a full tutorial on how to paint glass, really in depth, if you want to catch back to my playlist and watch that. But the next step is to spray it with a primer. You can just paint your glass jar without a primer, but I find when you're selling things, you want it to be really durable. So the primer is key here. And I just took it outside, I spritzed it. You don't need to cover it completely. You can see where I don't have it completely covered. You just need it sprayed so you have something for the chalk paint to grip onto, and let it dry. And then you're ready to paint with chalk paint. So I'll just put this down here. I mix up my homemade chalk paint. I find when painting glass jars, chalk paint works best. I don't have very good results when using acrylic paint or just latex paint. It just does not adhere as well. So if you're painting glass, always mix up a batch of chalk paint and you'll get really good results. I do have a chalk paint recipe on my channel, and you can watch that if you want to see how I make mine that I love. I also have a booklet in my Etsy store of all of my favorite paint recipes. You can grab that too. I kind of like myself, I like having the recipe right in front of me so I can look up the ingredients and the measurements and then mix it as I go. And the booklet is really great for that. So you can see I'm just doing long strokes. You don't want to put it on thick. You just want the first coat to be a nice thin coat. Let it dry completely before you put on your next coat. Don't rush it. You can also use your heat gun if you want to speed up the process a little bit. Just don't hold it too close. Make sure you're doing it a little bit of a ways away and dry. So when I'm painting my glass jars, I'm going to do 2 coats of the chalk paint. Sometimes I'll even do 3 depending on how white I want it, but definitely 2 coats, sometimes 3. So we're just going to set this aside and let it dry now. I was just talking about my paint recipe book. Now this one I've made kind of fancy, but it is in my Etsy store, and I have all of my paint recipes tested. They all work fantastic, listed in this downloadable, printable booklet. And I like it because if I want to mix up some sand paint, I whip out this booklet. I've got everything written down right here and I can make it. This has 11 recipes in it, so I'll put this down in the description if you want to have a look at that in my Etsy store. I have already done one of these and put my graphic on it because they have to dry, and I let them dry overnight, 24 hours. So I did this yesterday so I could show you guys today, and it had to be dry to make sure that it's really dry. But I was just going to show you, because this is an example, putting the graphic on the bottle is the exact same as how I put the graphic on a piece of wood. I wanted to show you so I could show you how much Mod Podge I use, because it's the same for on a sign as it is on a bottle. Using my Mod Podge mat, again, I've painted this piece of scrap wood. I actually used some salt wash paint on this, and really aggressively, and it gave it a really nice kind of chippy finish. But so this is the graphic. If you're doing, so right now what we're going to do is the Mod Podge reverse graphic transfer. You have to make sure that you're reversing your text when you do this technique. And I printed this off on my LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the text, and sized it for my project. You're going to do the exact same thing for the glass bottles. I'm just doing this piece of wood sign so I could show you, because my graphic on my bottle had to sit overnight, so I wanted to show you ahead of time. And you can see I'm not putting very much on. I'm just putting a light coat on. The more Mod Podge you put on, the more of an outline you're going to see. Mod Podge is thick, so if you're gobbing it on when you rub that paper off, you're going to see the whole outline of your graphic, and we don't want that to happen. It doesn't take very much product to make this work, so we're just putting on a light coat, placing it down. Exact same process on a glass bottle as it is on wood. Press it down, make sure you get all your bubbles and wrinkles out, and set it aside and let it dry overnight. So we're going to get this out of the road. We are going to go to our bottle. Same process. This is sat 24 hours. I've got a sponge and a little bit of water. Now you have to, this is a little bit different than the wood, because if you get too much water on your glass where you've painted, it's going to lift that paint up. So you want to make sure that you are just getting that water on the paper. If you get it over on the edges, you're going to rub your paint off, and it can be tricky. So you just want to make sure that you're just getting it on the paper. Now you can see that I can start to see my words show through. That's how we know we have enough water on it. And just start in the middle of your graphic, rub the paper off, and your graphic is going to show through. So like I said before, these are one of my best sellers, right alongside of the wooden signs. If you're making stuff for craft sales, or you're selling online, or you're listing in Etsy, these are a really great addition to, and you have no cost because the bottle was already going in your recycling bin. So you don't have to go and buy any product to do this. And the other thing that I'll mention when you're doing glass bottles like this is don't start using a lot of funky colors. If I'm doing something to sell, I stick to just neutrals, whites, beiges. You don't want to get like a funky pink, because what's going to happen is not everybody has pink in their home decor. So you're limited to who you can sell to. If you're just using neutral colors like white and black and beiges and neutrals, then you've opened up your potential customers a lot more by just doing, like I said, the neutral colors. So you just want to go really slow. I can dip my finger in the water as it dries out, work in small areas, and rub this graphic off. Now this graphic here, I'll just show you what it is. This is actually one of my most popular ones, and it is a heaven quote. Those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day, unseen, unheard, but always near, still loved, still miss, and very dear. So this is a really beautiful quote, and I love doing them on the bottles. They're great for people to buy and then give to a loved one who can remember, so they can remember someone that they've lost, and it's just a thoughtful gift. Also, if you are a member of my channel or you're a member of my graphics club over on Patreon, and you see any graphics that you like, make sure you're using your discount code, because you can get 50% off all of my graphics in my Etsy store. You can use an inkjet or a laser jet printer. It will work on both printers. It's just the inkjet does take a little bit more time and a little bit more patience when you're rubbing it off. I do have a comparison video on my channel comparing the inkjet and the laser jet after it's finished, and I find with the inkjet it just looks a little bit more faded. It just looks like it's a little bit more grayish than that really pop black color of the ink, but it definitely can be done. So don't think that you're limited if you don't have a laser jet printer to do this craft, because you can. If you are going to do a lot of these signs and bottles and you're doing it to make a little bit of extra money on the side, it would be worthwhile investing in a laser jet printer. It just will save you so much time, and they just look crisper, they look nicer, I find, in my opinion anyways. If you're just doing a project here and there, you can definitely get away with using an inkjet printer. So the paper that you're using when you're doing this transfer method is the cheapest computer paper that you can find. If you're using a thick computer paper, then of course it's going to be more paper to rub off, and it's going to take you longer. So I just buy the Amazon paper. It's cheap, it's not very thick, and it's really easy to rub off. If you're using a really good quality paper, then it just makes sense that you're going to have more paper to rub off. So that's something that you can look into when you're doing this transfer, is just make sure you're not using something that's good quality. It takes a little bit of patience, takes a little bit of time, and I find it really relaxing. I just kind of grab a tea or a coffee, and then I just sit and I just rub the paper off, and I find it really relaxing. So you can see right here in the corner, I've almost got all the paper rubbed off. And I just like working in small sections and going along and rubbing it off as I go. So I'll just leave this for now, because you guys don't need to see me rub this whole thing off, but you get the point of rubbing the graphic off. This is a beautiful heaven quote. Once I've rubbed all of the graphic off, I will seal it up with some spray polyacrylic sealer. I find I like this the best. You can seal it up with Mod Podge. I don't like Mod Podge as a finish coat. I don't think it looks as nice as using this spray polyacrylic sealer. This also comes in a brush on too. You can use either, they both work great. And I like the matte finish, but you can do a gloss or semi-gloss finish too, depending on your preference. So once I rub all of the paper off, then I'll seal that up with the polyacrylic sealer, and then you can add something onto the neck of it to embellish it. So I have another one here. It's going to show you same thing. This is another graphic that I love, Be Kind, and we're just going to wet it with the water. You can make your own homemade Mod Podge, and it is perfect for decoupaging, but for some reason, whatever they put in the formula of the Mod Podge that allows it to transfer. It does not work with the homemade Mod Podge. So if you're wanting to do this method with the school glue, it doesn't work that great. You can get it to transfer a little bit, and definitely it could be something that you could experiment with, but it doesn't work as great as Mod Podge. Now, and this one is rubbing off really nicely. This one I might see if I can get it. We'll stick on here and finish the whole thing so I can show you how I'll finish it off. And this graphic is, I printed these off so you can see, is this graphic here. It's in my Etsy store. Again, if you want to craft with them, you can head over there and you can check that out. I started a Patreon group for my graphics, and the support has been overwhelming. You guys are loving it. So I'll just explain while I'm rubbing off here how it works. Within the Patreon, I started a club, a graphic club, where if you sign up, you get any new graphic that I have uploaded into my Etsy store that month. So you're guaranteed to get at least 20 graphics, and it's $6.99 a month. They're sent right to your inbox. You have a PNG, a JPEG, one of these reverse files for every image that I do. You can pick which one you want to craft with, and you can use it, which is a fantastic deal because my graphics in my Etsy store are $2.50 a piece. So I think if you get 20 graphics, that works out to 35 cents a piece. So I'm all about sharing my graphics affordably so you guys can make things like these, go to a sale, sell it, and not have to spend a whole bunch of money on graphics either when you're doing it. So it's a great deal. The link is in, I've got it pinned at the top of the comments if anybody's interested in joining and joining me over on Patreon for the Graphics Club. And they come out, so what we do is we are sending out the graphics every Friday night at midnight. It'll go to your inbox, so when you wake up Saturday morning, the graphics will be there, and you can look through them, download them to your computer, craft with them. And they also are not copyrighted, so you don't have to worry about when you make something with one of my graphics and paying a copyright free. I just want you to be able to use them. So that's a bonus too. So this one's coming off really nice. I want to get this one off because I want to show you another little thing that I like to do with these bottles. Oh, the other thing that we should talk about is how I price my DIYs. Now, everybody's going to be a little bit different for how much you can sell them for. Of course, if you're in the city, you're probably going to be able to sell them for more than in the country. So it's kind of just a general idea, but I have a formula that I use when I'm pricing my DIYs, and it works well for me. If you're doing a project that's going to take you 18 hours to complete, this formula is not going to work. This is for small DIY crafts that you can do in 20 minutes, a half an hour. And I have a video, step-by-step video with all of those formulas and instructions in that video to guide you along if you want to learn how to price your DIYs. I have a booklet in my Etsy store too that has everything that you need to price your items at the and it goes through step by step, wholesale, retail, calculating it all. Really helpful if you're going to start into flea markets or craft sales, or if you have a booth. That's a great starting point for pricing your things. So that's in my Etsy store if you wanted to check that out also. So when I'm rubbing these off, I'm not actually using a lot of pressure. It's just, and you can feel the paper roll up underneath your fingers. And you can see, like, I'm not putting a lot of pressure. I'm just kind of rubbing circular motion and the paper's rolling off. If you're like really reefing on it, yeah, it's probably going to hurt your fingers, but you don't need to. You don't need to put a lot of pressure on them. So here we've done a reverse graphic transfer with my laser jet printer on a bottle. These sell fantastic. How cute is this? This is just an empty wine bottle. What I think I want to do, and I wanted to show you guys because I wanted to finish it, is sometimes, because they're black and white, if you have a colored laser, then you're going to be able to do colored graphics, but my LaserJet printer just has black ink in it. So what I like to do sometimes is I'll just grab my acrylic paint and just add a little color to it. You don't need to very much. It's almost like a dry brush. And you can just add a pop of color onto it. Doesn't that look great? How do you know when to stop rubbing? So you will know, I'll just bring this up. You will know when to stop rubbing when you have a nice crisp black line. So see right here on the D, it's still a little bit cloudy. I haven't gotten all the paper off. So I can go back in, rub it, and you can feel, you'll get the feel of it while you're doing it. So I don't feel any paper on there. It's all gone. And see how that cloudiness is gone? That's how you know you've got all your paper off. So I'm just taking my acrylic paint and just kind of almost dry brushing. You don't want very much because you don't want it to leak through into your black ink, but it just kind of gives it a pop of color. I like doing this when I'm doing a graphic transfer that has like a floral print, and you can add all kinds of different colors and makes it look nicer. This is one of my favorite graphics. I love this. Be Kind. And you can also just take your finger and dab it so you get all the extra off. And the same thing, like once we're finished this, I will seal this all up with a polyacrylic sealer, and it gives it a really nice finish and it seals everything in. So there, that's all ready to be sealed up, and I love it. Oh, okay. Let's go on to another one that I did. I'm going to show you this one. So this was, I think this was actually an apple cider vinegar bottle. I spray painted on my primer, put on 2 coats of chalk paint, and then what I did, because I want this to look kind of like, well, an antique look, I have a little bit of instant coffee and water. It's almost dry actually. And what I did was I just took it and just dabbed it all over the glass. It soaked into the chalk paint and it gave this rustic kind of stippled look. And then I sealed this up with Mod Podge. And this is what we ended up getting. This is on here really good. You can see it's not scratching off. I'm going to put this graphic on it. So this is a graphic, I did this ahead of time, but very simple. Printed this off on my LaserJet printer. You can print this off also on your inkjet printer, but if you're going to, sorry, I coffee stained the paper first and then I printed on it with my LaserJet printer. If you're using an inkjet printer, after you've printed on it, spray it with hairspray to seal in your graphic so the ink doesn't run. I find if I put 2 good coats of hairspray on and then I decoupage, then my graphic isn't going anywhere. And then what I did was I sealed this up a little bit with Mod Podge on the top of the graphic, and we're just going to decoupage it onto the bottle. So I'm just going to go back to my Mod Podge mat. So we're just putting some Mod Podge on our graphic here. You want quite a bit on this one. And this one you don't have to use the store-bought Mod Podge when you're doing the decoupaging. You can mix up some of your homemade Mod Podge and decoupage on too. Then we're going to find where we want it on the bottle. I think right here. We're going to decoupage. Now this one, I just ripped, you can see how it's a ragged edge. I just ripped it around the edges so it gives it more of an antique look. Oh, I love this. I've really been drawn lately to primitive decor. I don't know, I just love it. That even, like I love farmhouse, but even going that extra little step to that primitive grungy, I'm really liking it. So what I'd like to do now is you can embellish the top with a ribbon. This is actually an old stained tea towel that I didn't want to throw out. So I cut it into strips and now I'm using it as ribbon, and it's great to use on the projects like this. You can just kind of tie it on and just use some scissors to cut it off. And you can even add some nice, I have some nice greenery here. You can even add some nice greenery. And isn't that great? And all it is, upcycled bottle. out of the recycling bin, and we've created this. Another way that you can upcycle some glass bottles. This, how stinking cute is this cow? It's in my Etsy store. What I've done with this was printed on my inkjet printer. So this is to prove that you can use an inkjet printer. I printed it off. First of all, I sized it for my project. I do have a video on how to size graphics. That's a great one too. You can check that out. Did this on my inkjet printer. Sprayed it with 2 coats of Firm Set hairspray. And then I put on a coat of Mod Podge. This ink is now not going anywhere. And then I'm just going to cut it off my sheet of paper. I've got a little line from my printer there we're going to get rid of. Cut right along the line. And cut along here. And we've got our graphic cutout that we can now decoupage on our bottle. Isn't that adorable? We're going to use our Mod Podge mat and put quite a bit on. You need to use a little bit more when you're decoupaging than when you're doing the transfer method. It takes a bit more to get it to adhere. So the thing with glass bottles and jars is you can also, it's so seasonal. At Christmas time, the heaven quotes sell the best. Or Christmas graphics on them. Personalize them. If you want to do mason jars, you can paint them, put a graphic on them, or personalize them, and then fill them full of goodies if you want to make them for gifts. Just, it's endless what you can do. And then we're just gonna push this on, getting all bubbles and wrinkles out. Oh, I just love this little cow on here with the flower crown. And then you can just put a light coat of Mod Podge on top of this, or you can use the polyacrylic sealer, which is my choice. I like the polyacrylic sealer, but I'm just putting on the Mod Podge just to show you what we got going on here. Seal it up. Don't skip this step, because again, if you're going to sell these, you want them sealed up really well. These are never washable. These can be dusted and they can be wiped down with a damp rag, but they can't be like thrown in the dishwasher and washed. It just won't hold up at all. Okay, so how cute is that? And then to finish this one off, I would probably, I've got some little burlap ribbon. I would probably get out my glue gun and then glue the ribbon along the top. That would be really cute. Another option would be, this is actually a bed sheet. It was a white bed sheet, cotton bed sheet. I coffee stained it and then ripped it into strips. And you can pick up a bed sheet at the thrift store for like under $5. And you will not imagine the amount of ribbon that you can get out of one bed sheet, just cutting it into strips. You'll have enough ribbon for a year to do your crafting projects with. And you can rip them into strips and then color them different colors, so you have all kinds of different ribbons to use. That's just a little idea anyways that you can do. And then just put your, maybe tie it into a bow, cut the ends a bit. You guys are all crafters, you know, you can just put your spin and your twist on all of these things. This is just kind of giving you some ideas. And then you can put some faux flowers in. Now I know we're kind of on the wrong angle here, and it's not quite dry, but how cute is that? And they sell fantastic. Heading back into the recycling bin again. I love this barbecue sauce, but the bottle is even cuter, and with that little wooden knob, I just love it. So I'm always saving them. Now we're going to get out the dollar store twine again, and we're just going to do some simple knots for this project. This is really easy to do. You're going to measure out a length of twine that's a little bit bigger than the neck of your bottle, and then do a double knot so it's nice and tight, and then cut off the ends. And then you can pull it off of your bottle. Now we're going to take our twine and we're going to measure out a piece of twine that's 3 times the length of the bottle. Now you want to have 8 of those strands the same length. Once you have those cut, we're going to take that ring that we made from the top of the bottle and we're going to fold those pieces of twine in half and we're going to attach them to that ring. This is a great project to do if you don't know how to macrame but you love the look, because all you need to do is know how to tie a basic knot. And we're just going to add those longer 8 pieces of twine to that ring that's going to sit on the top of the bottle. Now we're going to place it on top of the bottle and we're going to take those 2 inside strands from either side and just tie a basic knot. Again, this is probably easier just to watch visually than have me explain it. Now we finished that first row, we're going to go on to the second row and we're going to take those inside pieces. We're creating a diamond pattern and we're going to repeat this back and forth until we get to the bottom of the bottle. Now we're all finished and I just gathered up the twine at the bottom and I attached it just like we did in our tassel, using the loop, looping it through and pulling it tight and trimming the edges. And now I'm going to make a little hanger for the top of the bottle. I've cut 3 pieces of twine in the length that I want for the hanger on my bottle and I'm just braiding it. And this is how easy it is to create a little hanger. We're going to use our hot glue gun and we're going to glue it on there. And then once I have the 2 sides glued on, I'm going to go back in with some twine and I'm going to add twine around the neck of the bottle to secure everything really well in place. I have this glass bottle that I tinted a nice amber color. Full tutorial on how to achieve this look. Really easy, but I want to put a label on it, a nice kind of antique looking label. I'm going to use this paper that I just made that I coffee stained to make a label for the bottle. I'm going to measure the size of the graphic that I want, and then I am going to put this paper through my printer and print right on it, and we'll have an antique looking label. I've printed out my graphic on the paper and I'm just going to cut it down to size. And then we're going to decoupage it on with my Mod Podge mat. Now because we've cut this and the edges aren't discolored anymore, I'm just going to take my sponge that has that coffee and just kind of sponge it along. Oh, there's how much of a mess I make. Sponge it along and make it look more authentic. We're going to set that aside and just let it dry for a little bit. We're going to add the Mod Podge onto the back. And then we're gonna put it on our bottle. This technique is fantastic at Halloween time to make potion bottles and spooky looking bottles, but I also like doing them in the farmhouse theme. So we're just gonna take our bottle and just center it on and set it aside and let it dry. So we have a bottle that I picked up at the thrift store that I tinted, and then I added a fantastic label with packing paper, coffee dyed. I love the way that it looks. And the paper that's left over, I have this label cutter that I've had for forever, and it works perfect for cutting out really nice labels. I put a hole in the top, put some twine through it, and you have some fantastic little gift tags. And this one is seriously so easy, but it turns out so adorable. Cut a piece of packing paper, a little bit bigger than your glass jar. I've just taken some and kind of rolled it and twisted it so it fits around the jar, and some elastics. I'm just gonna take this and crunch it right up, make it nice and wrinkly. It also makes it easier to work with when you've got it crunched right up, because it kind of softens it a little bit. I'm gonna place the glass jar in the middle, get our elastics, and just gather it up all at the top. Take those elastics, and you might have to double up on it so it's nice and tight. And then we're gonna trim off around the top. Got it all trimmed up around the top, and then we're just gonna take our twisted piece and cover up that elastic and just glue it with a little bit of hot glue. I've added a full plant in the middle. You can put some fresh flowers. This would make a fantastic gift. I added one of my homemade paper tags. I have a tutorial on how to make homemade paper. Really simple, really easy. You can check that out also. But how quick and easy is this to whip this up with some packing paper? Another way to use up some packing paper is to wrap up a bottle of wine for a gift. Another really simple way, but it looks so elegant when you're all finished. I printed off, smile, there's wine, and that's on that piece of paper that I coffee stained, and I put it through my printer and printed this. I just have a homemade tassel that I made, and I'm gonna add that on, and a piece of jute. Grab a bottle of wine for your next dinner party and wrap it up with some packing paper. I really love this. I think it turned out really beautiful, and I think anybody would love to have a bottle of wine wrapped like this. For this packing paper upcycle, I've just got a glass jar that I've saved from the recycling bin, and I'm taking my packing paper and just twisting it into a long rope. And you want to twist it quite tight. It probably will unravel a little bit on you, but that's okay. So I'm going to twist this all up, and then we're going to put on some of our homemade Mod Podge. Okay, we got all kinds, all twisted up. Now we're going to get messy. Homemade Mod Podge, I'm going to add a little bit of acrylic paint, just a brown color. We're gonna tint that paper a little bit. I don't want too much because I just kind of want a beige color. We're just gonna mix it up really well. Now we're gonna put that paper in that Mod Podge. This is gonna get really messy. It's gonna get your hands dirty, but we just wanna coat it with a little bit of that glue so when it dries, it'll stay together. You don't have to completely soak it, and then as we're pulling it out, I'm going to retwist it again so it'll go back into its shape. And after we have this all coated up, I'm gonna set it aside and we're gonna let it dry. Not dry completely, but enough that it's gonna hold its shape. We've got these all twisted up and they're almost dry, so they're a little bit stiff. They're really ugly right now, but stay tuned because it's gonna get really pretty. We are just gonna hot glue this all around the whole glass jar until it's completely covered. I've got it all covered and it's all dry. It leaves such an amazing texture on this glass jar. We're gonna paint it now. I've got some acrylic paint and I have a little bit of that coffee solution left over from when I dyed the packing paper. We're gonna combo back and forth between the two until I get a color that I like. All finished. I hot glued a wooden bowl that I had in my stash on the bottom. I think it has real boho vibes. Put a faux plant in the top. Hard to believe this was made out of a great big bundle of packing paper. I had this huge pickle jar that I've washed out really well. Sometimes it's really hard to get the pickle smell out. Little tip, soak it overnight in a little bit of bleach in your kitchen sink. I've taken it outside and I'm gonna give it just a light coat of spray paint. This will just help my project adhere better than just being on straight glass. For this project, I'm using some modeling clay, air dry clay that I can find at my dollar store, and it works really well. If you can't find it at your dollar store, you can always find it at your local craft store or Michael's or on Amazon, and the DAS modeling clay works really well. I'm gonna flatten this out until it's about 1/4 of an inch thin, and just kind of flipping it over. I've got it on a piece of parchment paper that's dusted with a little bit of cornstarch, and I'm just gonna roll it out until I know that it'll almost go around my whole jar. Before we put the clay on the jar, I'm coating it with just a light coat of my Mod Podge mat. You can use any type of Mod Podge gloss mat because we're not gonna see it. It's going to be underneath and it's acting as a glue on the clay. Now when the Mod Podge is still wet, we're going to roll it in that air dry clay and shape it around that pickle jar. It might not fit. I might need to add a little bit more, but once we get it on the jar, we're gonna mold it and shape it so it fits really well around the edges and everything. So you can always add little bits if you need to get it completely covered. Okay, I got it completely covered. I had to add little bits and pieces of clay here and there. Now I haven't completely covered the bottom, but I've rolled it around the edge a little bit. And now I'm just taking some water, dipping my fingers in the water, and I'm just smoothing it out, making sure that it's really blended in really well. And I haven't missed any places with some clay, and just making sure that it's really sealed well around that whole pickle jar. Now I have this metal table that I have in my shed that I paint on. It's covered in paint, but when I put the parchment paper down and roll that pickle jar in it, the texture it creates from all that paint on the table is fantastic. So a mess has created something beautiful. Now I'm going to use one of my molds that I made. I just posted a video, DIY silicone molds, and what you can create for your DIY projects with these molds are beautiful. This is just one of them. I used a little dollar store frame to create this mold, and I'm putting the air dry clay into it. And then very carefully, I'm going to take it out of the mold, and isn't this gorgeous? We're gonna add this right into the middle of the pickle jar. Now to get this to stick to our jar, I'm gonna use a paintbrush. The bristles are kind of stiff in this. We're going to dip it in some water and then press it quite hard into that clay. And we're going to do the top of that piece with the frame mold and add some water onto that and scratch it up a little bit. And then we're going to very carefully press it down. You don't wanna press it too hard because you don't wanna lose any of that detail in the molds, and set it aside and let it dry. Now I decided I wanted to add 2 little handles on either side. So I've rolled out a piece of the clay and I'm just gonna shape it until I like the shape of it and it looks like a handle. It's gonna prove to be a little bit tricky to get both sides the same, but I'm gonna do the best that I can and just kind of mold it and press it into that clay so it attaches really well. Once you see this all finished, you will never throw out another glass jar in your recycling bin. You will want to turn all of them into little mini crocks. I'm obsessed. Okay, I think I'm happy with the way that it looks. I've got the handles on, the mold on the front. We're gonna set it aside and let it dry overnight. Now, I don't want you all to panic because the next day, this is what it looks like. Air dry clay shrinks. So when we put it around the jar, as it dries, it pulls apart and it creates these fantastic cracks. But we're gonna embrace it and I'm gonna show you the next step. We are now gonna decoupage over this whole pickle jar. I've got 1 ply of a napkin and I've tore it into little pieces and we're just using the Mod Podge mat and we're going to add those pieces all over that whole pickle jar. Just putting a light coat of Mod Podge over each piece of that little torn napkin and then getting the next one and layering it up until it's completely covered. And this is what it looks like. You can still see the indents of the cracks, which we want to embrace, but it's going to make it nice and sturdy and strong. It's also giving it a very authentic look of an old antique crock. If you've never used air dry clay before, don't be intimidated. It's really easy to work with, and I didn't use any special tools to create this crock. I've got it completely covered with that torn napkin. Now, I didn't put any on the mold because it will be fine and it has adhered really well, but we're gonna set this aside, let it dry completely before we finish it off. It took a couple hours for it to dry completely, but now it's ready to paint. I'm mixing up just some acrylic paint and I'm trying to get the look of an antique crock, which is almost like a linen color that I see in most photos. And I'm going to apply this with a sponge. The sponge will just give that texture of a crock more than if you have brush strokes in it. And you can see as I'm applying that paint, you're still gonna see those big cracks and you're gonna see all that texture just by putting a light coat of that acrylic paint on. I had some of this antiquing dust from Country Chic and I'm gonna use that. I think it's just gonna give it a little bit more of an aged look. You can also use a dark wax or you could even rub some mud into it or some dirt and it would give you kind of the same effect. This is just a dust that you just kind of dab on. It's gonna stay in the little nooks and crannies and just give it more of an aged look. Now, I created these graphics. They're available in my Etsy store if you want to try this project for yourself. I'll put the link down below in the description, but I absolutely love them. And I'm, for this one, only going to use the number 5. So I've cut that out and we're going to apply it right in the middle of that frame. I printed this graphic off on my LaserJet printer, making sure to reverse the text, and I sized it. I'm putting a liberal amount of Mod Podge completely over it. You want to put quite a bit on because the clay is absorbent and you might not have a really good transfer if you don't get enough Mod Podge on there. I've let it sit overnight. This is the next day. Put a little tiny bit of water on it. You want to go really slow or you're going to reactivate that clay. Do little small sections. Dip your finger back in the water if you need to, and just take your time and you'll get a great graphic transfer. Now that I've got that all done, I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to seal it up with a polyacrylic sealer using the matte finish. And I am in love with this. I've made some of these and I always really love the way that they turned out, so that's why I wanted to share this technique with you today. And like I said, you'll never look at glass jars the same way now. Imagine all of the possibilities. And if you haven't had a chance to check out my video where I DIY'd some silicone molds, you gotta watch that one. Today I'm going to show you how you can take glass jars and turn them into beautiful rope lanterns for your home decor. I always save all of my glass jars. I rescue them out of the recycling bin and I'm going to take them down and wash them really, really well in some hot soapy water. Sometimes these pickle jars is really stubborn to get the smell of the pickles out of them, but I do find if you can't do that, soak it overnight in a little bit of bleach and water in your sink, and that usually gets rid of it. So let's get started. Now I want these glass jars to have a little bit of a nautical feel, so I'm going to tint the glass. I have a full tutorial on how to do this. It's a really simple technique, so I'm just going to kind of go fast through it right now, but it's going to create a nice sea glass look on each of these jars. I'm going to do a light green, and a light blue. And this is just gel food coloring. I'll put the links below in the description of all the products that I'm using today to create these lanterns. This is such an easy technique. Some Elmer's glue, some food coloring, swirl it around in your glass jar, and then make sure it's covered completely. And when you're all finished, it leaves a really neat tinted looking glass. Like I said before, I have a full tutorial. Check that out after you watch this. These are all coated really well. Now they're going to be put in the oven at 200 degrees Celsius. And every 5 minutes, I'm going to turn them upside down and up until they're dry. It usually takes, depending on your oven, anywhere between half an hour to an hour, and it will dry translucent and look beautiful. I've got them in the oven and I'm just going to dry them out now. Isn't this blue a beautiful color from using that Elmer's glue technique to create tinted glass? I just love it. Now I'm going to measure out a bunch of jute the length of the jar. Okay, I have them all cut out now, and now I'm going to hot glue them onto the jar. I love my Gorilla hot glue gun sticks. It works fantastic. For this, I'll put a link down below, and I'm just going to put one on the front side, and then I'm going to flip it over and put one on the opposite side. So when I'm laying these down, they're all going to be evenly dispersed around the jar. I've put 8 pieces of jute around the jar, and now I'm just going to hot glue the ends of them just to make sure that they're secured down really well on the base. I used 8 pieces of jute to go around the outside of the jar, and now I'm going to put 2 pieces around the jar in the diameter. I'm going to cut them the length that I need and then hot glue them on. Now I want to create a handle for this lantern. I've got a piece of the jute and I'm going to untwist it so I can take apart all of the ends, and then I'm going to tape it down to my table and I'm going to braid it, and I think that makes a really cute looking handle. I've got it braided to the length that I need, and then I'm just going to tie a little knot in the end of each braid just to hold it in place while I place it on the lantern. Now we're ready to hot glue that on. I'm going to put a little bit of the hot glue there and then attach it, press it down so it attaches really firmly, and then I'm going to go to the opposite end of the jar and glue it down on that side. Now I'm going to take a piece of jute and wrap it around the neck of the bottle to cover up that handle and just make it have more of a finished look. Okay, now we're ready to work on the second one. I'm going to use a thinner jute for this one. I'm going to wrap the jute around the glass bottle just a little bit bigger than it is. I want to have a loose circle that I can lift off after I tie a little knot in it. And I love the color of this green and the way that it turned out. It gives me real beach vibes. And as you can see, I tied it just loose so you can lift that circle off. Now you want to cut a whole bunch of strings 6 times the length of your glass jar. That will ensure that you have enough when you're tying your knots for this project. And I'm going to cut 12 for this project. Every jar is going to be different, so you can kind of determine how many you want to cut, but you always want to make sure that you have even numbers. You're going to fold that jute in half, and then we're going to do a lark's head knot around that circle. And you're going to add all 12 of those jute strings around that circle using the lark's head knot. Okay, now we have it all done. We're going to lift it up and we're going to put that circle over the top of the jar and space them out so they're evenly distributed along the neck of that jar. Now we have this all distributed around the neck of the bottle, and all you have to do now is know how to tie a knot. This is so simple, and it'll create a beautiful looking lantern. Now you can see those four strings. I'm going to take the two inside strings of those and just tie a knot. And you want to just kind of tie it to where you want it to lay on your jar, and then keep going all the way around the jar, making sure that you have all of your knots all on the same line and not uneven and the same tightness, and just work away on that. I've finished the first row, and now we're going to start on the second row. So now we're going to go and make it like a diamond. We're going to take those two inside strings and then knot them together, and that's going to create that diamond grid looking cover for your lantern. Okay, and I have it all done, but now you have all this extra string at the bottom. I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to trim off that string so it's easier to work with to glue it down to the bottom of the pickle jar. And I'm going to glue each of those jute strings into the center of the jar, and then I'm going to cut out a little piece of cardboard, put some hot glue on it, and then glue that right down to keep everything in place, and it's nice and neat and tidy. For the green lantern, I'm going to put in a battery operated candle. It looks really cute in that. You can also put a votive in. And this blue lantern, I'm going to put some sand in the bottom of it to give it that real beach nautical look. And then I'm going to put a votive right into the sand, and your lanterns are complete. And aren't these darling? And the pickle jars were free out of the recycling bin. I had some leftover jute that I used up for this project, and I love the way that they turned out. Beautiful gifts and really simple to make. This was a plain glass vase, and I've turned it into this, and it's beautiful with a candle in it. It sparkles. It's perfect DIY to do for the holidays. So this is the glass vase that I'm going to use. You just need some Mod Podge and some Epsom salt. I like to do this on a silicone baking sheet. It's easier to clean up the mess when you're finished. You're going to take your Mod Podge. I'm using Mod Podge matte, but you can also use gloss if that's what you have in your stash. And you're just going to paint a liberal coat over the glass. This piece has a lot of intricate details, so I'm making sure that I'm getting Mod Podge right into it. If you're just doing a flat glass surface, then just try to make it nice and even. You can use school glue, but I do find that the Mod Podge adheres to the glass better. And beware, none of your glass will be safe after this because it's so beautiful when it's finished. And you have to work quite quickly because we do not want that Mod Podge to dry. It has to be tacky when we're adding the Epsom salt. Now here's where you can get a little bit creative. You can add some sparkles or some glitter into your Epsom salt if you want to have that. I'm going to add a little bit of blue glitter and just incorporate it into that Epsom salt. And I'm just going to stir the two together, making sure that it's evenly distributed through that Epsom salt. So when we sprinkle it on, it looks really nice. Just pick up your vase and then just start to sprinkle in the wet Mod Podge. And that's why you have to work quickly, because if the Mod Podge has started to dry, then that Epsom salt and glitter is not going to stick to it. And you can see already how beautiful this is going to be. And you can also see why it's handy doing it on a silicone mat or a piece of cardboard, something that you can pick up and put the Epsom salt that you have dropped on the table back in the dish so you can reuse it. If you're looking to make a winter wonderland scene, this technique is perfect to create that sparkly effect with candles or a centerpiece. Take your time making sure that you get
the Epsom salt and the glitter right into all the little nooks and crannies so we have it completely covered. Now we can just pick up that mat, and any of the Epsom salt and glitter that we haven't used, we can dump into that little dish and use it for the next project. And you can make it go along a little bit faster in the drying process and use a heat gun, or you can just let it air dry and it might take an hour or so. If you want it to be really frosty, you can add another layer of Mod Podge and the Epsom salt and glitter, and you can just put your Mod Podge in another dish because we don't want to have that glitter and Epsom salt go in your main bottle of Mod Podge. So put in a little dish and then just go back and start layering on again. And you have to be careful when you're brushing on that Mod Podge that it doesn't lift off that layer underneath. So just take your time. And then when I'm all finished, I'm just taking my hand and I'm just patting it down to make sure that it's adhered really well and to knock off any of the pieces that aren't stuck. Now, of course, this is not waterproof. It is just for decor. But if you want to seal it up and have it last a little bit longer, give it a spray of polyacrylic sealer. And you can also see how you can add it to tree branches or flowers, and it gives a beautiful sparkly effect. I've lit the candle inside and the sparkle is beautiful. And we've created this really winter wonderland frosted glass.
Today's DIY, I've got a glass jar, I've got a candle. This candle actually came from, originally came from Michael's, I think, but I found it at the thrift store and it was like $2. It wasn't used. I've actually used it once, but I brought this in because we can do this trick on this also. And I've got a peanut butter jar. The first thing that you're going to have to look for, or maybe you even have some in your office supply stash, are CD labels or address labels. You've seen me, if you've been following along, you've seen me use these before in lots of graphic transfer techniques. I find these all the time at the thrift store because people don't use CDs anymore. And these are the labels that they used to put on top of the CDs. And you can find the address labels. There has not been a time in my area where I have gone into the thrift store and I have not found some of these. You can buy them at the at your office supply store. They can be a bit pricey, so make sure that you're looking in the thrift store. Now, another hack is I have had people say that they've had really good luck using the back of the Cricut paper. You know that slick paper on the back of the Cricut vinyl, that it also works with that too. I haven't tried it, but I have had friends that have tried it and it's worked for them. So if you can't get your hands on some CD labels or address labels, then try that little trick too. Now the first thing that we want to do is you just want to peel off. We don't need these labels. You can use these for another project. I always kind of set them aside and you can incorporate them into your paper crafting or something like that. But yeah, we're just going to peel these off. When we're printing on this, we don't want the ink to soak into the paper. So that's what we need this paper for. So you can see the one side's paper and then this side's shiny. So what we're gonna do now is I've gone into my graphics program. I've picked out some graphics. I've put them in my Google Docs and I've sized them for my projects. And then I printed. So my printer, it feeds through like this. So I've put my paper in, printed on it, and this is what I've got. So this is printed with my laser printer on the shiny side, all sized and ready to go. It's that simple. If you see any of these graphics that I'm using today and you like them, they're all available in my Etsy store, so you can grab them. These are all really good sellers. Okay, so now we're just going to cut these down. You don't want to cut it right to the edge. You want to leave a little bit of a border. Now you have to be careful that you're not touching the toner because it will rub off. So you want to be really careful and you want to get your lines as straight as you can. Okay, so the next step is page protector. This came from the dollar store. Dollarama. It was $1.25. I actually found these at the thrift store. It was a pack of 3. I haven't even broken into them yet because I haven't had to. I got 3 of them for $1.99. So check the craft section at the thrift store. You might be able to find some of this also. If not, pick it up at Dollarama. I have done this technique before, and I've had people ask me if they can use the contact paper or the shelf liner. You can, but I find the page protector is a little bit thinner than the other. So this just kind of blends it a little bit better if you can find that. So that's what you need next, the page protector. So I have a piece cut already, and we're just going to cut out a piece, just a little bit. And again, we don't want to touch that toner because it will rub off. We're just going to cut a piece the same size as our graphic. And then, because this is always hard to get off, we're going to, I'm just using my little Cricut tool, my little weeder. There we go. Okay. So we're going to, I just like to start it and just peel a little bit off at the top. Center it exactly where you want it. We don't want any bubbles or wrinkles, so we want to be really careful with this step. And then just slowly peel away the backing. Now I've just got my Cricut tool again, and we really want to press that right into that page protector. Really press it in. You want to use a firm hand. We want this nice and neat because it's going to go on our glass jar, and we don't want any wonky lines. We're going to flip this over. We're going to catch the backing. We're going to peel that backing off, and look at it, stays on that page protector. Isn't that so cool? Now, so this is why you have to really rub it in, because you want that ink to transfer. See how it's coming right off the paper? It's transferred right onto that. So then we have this candle that's a glass jar. It's not painted. We want this to blend in. You can just set it on your candle. So you can imagine the possibilities with this technique. Customizing, personalizing, seasonal, so many ideas of what you can do with this technique. So if you can find the supplies to do this, it's so much fun. So let's do another one. I love this quote. So we're going to cut this one out. Again, we don't want to touch the toner. You want to get straight lines, as straight as you can get. Try not to touch it here. Okay, we're going to pick this up. We're going to cut a piece of that page protector, just a little tiny bit bigger. Pull down the top a little bit. And we want to make sure we take our time, have it centered and laying flat. And then slowly press it down. Get our Cricut tool, really press it in. Okay. Now we're going to trim off that extra because we want it to look nice and neat. Look at that, isn't that so cool? We're gonna peel it away. This is a peanut butter jar. This is plastic, so I'm gonna show you.